Hi, I'm Myra Lewin, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience with rheumatoid arthritis and completely clearing that disease from my being, and the use of Ayurveda and Yoga to do that.
What was your first experience with rheumatoid arthritis, such as age, signs, symptoms, diagnosis, prognosis?
The first signs that at the time that I recognized that there was a real problem was when I was 29 years old. And I woke up one day and I had swollen joints. I had swollen thumbs, swollen elbows, they were red and hot. And I was not particularly in tune with my body at all. So there were many signs coming up to that, I'm sure, but I wasn't aware of them. And I became ill right away then. It wasn't a gradual thing at that point. I had a fever, and I ran a fever, a low-grade fever, for about 7 months. But as I look back at it, I actually had it when I was a child. And at the age of 7, I had deformities come up on my feet, and I had constant pain in my feet. And I used to think that the pain in my feet was because I had the knots on them, sort of like bunions. But that, and back then comfortable shoes were not really available. And so it was very, very comfortable to wear shoes. But now I look back and realize, I was in pain all the time, even when I wasn't wearing shoes, which was as much as possible. So the signs then were the same kind of thing. It was, pain and discomfort in the joints, something like a feeling of burning almost. And then I used to feel like I had fire sort of going through my bones.
How and when were you diagnosed?
So there were many times at the doctor as a child, and it was called growing pains, and just put off to, oh, well, there's nothing wrong. And actually, I was not a child who was sick. I had one cold my entire childhood, but I was in this constant pain. The diagnosis came, when I was 29 and just turning 30, and I went to a number of physicians. I had plenty of funding at the time, and I had access to go all over the country or the world if I wanted to. And so I went to a number of people, and what was told to me was that, this is just the way it is, maybe it's hereditary or not. They weren't talking about that so much back then. This was in the 80s, early 80s. But that there was really nothing I could do about it except take drugs for the pain. And there were a few things that were offered. And actually I tried 2 things. I tried one medication that was an anti-inflammatory, which made me feel really bad and didn't really help at all. And so that was only for a little less than a month. And then what did happen, though, was that it really brought me to a crisis in life. So I had to really take a look at, do I want to keep living like this? Because what the physicians were telling me was that this was it, that it was just going to progress and get worse, and that I was going to be in pain, and that I would need to take medication, and that that was just the way it was. And so I, had a really reflective time to look at, how do I want to live my life? Do I really want to do this? And I would say most people would have described me as quite suicidal at the time, because I really, really wasn't sure I was willing to stay around with that kind of condition. So I found a physician then that was looking at alternatives and going back to some of the old ways, using homeopathy and that kind of thing. And he helped me, and he gave me something called a hydroxycortisone, and it was in tablets so that I could control the amount of it. And that allowed me to continue working, because I wasn't able to work otherwise. But I could control the amount and keep the amount very small. And so then I went into a period of where I had made a decision that I was going to heal. And that most important thing now I realized was that I made a decision that I wanted to live and that I wasn't going to be in pain all the time.
Were there any particular triggers?
Triggers in terms of things that I was doing that would bring episodes. You know, for me, it was pretty constant. It would get worse sometimes, but I never understood why. Now I can look back and see that it's the disease really is, you know, it's a combination of the dosha imbalance and a tremendous amount of repressed anger. And I had a great deal of that. And that's really what would trigger things. So if I got angry at something or somebody or felt resentful, then it would be, then it would flare up.
What were the biggest modifications that having the rheumatoid arthritis had on your lifestyle?
Well, I was kind of accustomed to being in pain, but I actually, when I was the sickest in the early 80s, I couldn't do much of anything, actually. I mean, I was still working. I would work, and I would go and just be inert, and then go to sleep, hopefully. And my sleep was pretty disturbed, actually. And it also was difficult because I was flying a lot with the work I was doing. And now I understand that that was actually aggravating the problem. But that was something that was also really difficult, and I had to curtail some of that while I was ill.
What is Ayurveda?
Well, that's a big question for a small amount of time. But, you know, Ayurveda is an art and a science. And it's the art of living, or it's the science of living. And it's based in prevention and longevity, and it's really about learning how to live in balance and harmony, and doing things then that keep you there. And so what Ayurveda is an amazing combination of tools to help us do that.
How does it work for healing, and how does it specifically view and treat rheumatoid arthritis?
Well, in terms of healing, we always look at what is out of balance or what isn't working well. So if the elements in the body, but we describe them as doshas, if those are out of balance, then we need to bring them back into balance. And then the symptoms that we call a disease then go away. So we go to the root cause of things, and that's really the most important thing. And that's what differentiates it from most other treatments. You know, we can offer some palliative treatment, meaning just relief from symptoms. But what we look to is to stop doing the things that are creating the imbalance, and then give the person, or myself in that case, the things that I need to come back into balance. And then those two, and the body's natural ability to heal, which we do everything possible to support, then is what brings this, being able to clear up a disease and not have to deal with it anymore.
How quickly did you see results using yoga and Ayurveda to the point that you were completely healed?
It took a couple of years, actually. It took about 2.5 years, I would say. And before I was pain-free most of the time, or where I felt like I wasn't sick anymore at all. And actually where I tested free of it. So having gone from a very high titer or measurement of it to nothing. The thing I think that's really important to recognize about that is that I did not identify with the disease. I didn't call it my rheumatoid arthritis. And I was taught not to, so that I wouldn't become attached to it, so that I wouldn't identify with it. And then the other piece of it is that I really didn't give the disease much attention. I really just started to look at what do I need to do to bring health. And, that was an exploration. And then when I found Ayurveda, it really allowed me to, and yoga, to clear up any residual that was there, even to the point where I had a lot of deformity in my joints, and most of that deformity is not even there anymore. You know, I have one joint, and I call it the little reminder. And, you know, I don't really have any desire to go back to doing things those old ways, because I feel so good now. But, you know, for me, if I get going a little too fast or doing too much, you know, then I have the joint of my thumb that was the first one that started giving me messages. And it'll just speak to me. It'll just give me it'll be a little pang. And I'll go, oh, right, okay, slow down a little bit. But otherwise, you know, my body is amazing. I'm amazed at it because with yoga and Ayurveda, it actually continues to get freer, more flexible, and stronger in a more balanced way. You know, in some ways, I'm not as strong as I was 30 or 40 years ago. And in many ways, in a whole way of walking around on the planet, I'm much, much stronger now. And I say strong meaning that I feel comfortable in my body, I can move it around easily, I can sit down on the floor and get up and not grunt and groan, and be very comfortable, and I can smile a lot because I don't have pain in my body.
And aside from Ayurvedic herbs, what other treatments did you use?
So oiling the body, and I also used the treatments of panchakarma, which helped me to sort of clear up the residual. You know, after the surface and really active nature of the disease was gone, then there was some residual. There was some toxins in my body. I was still kind of stiff. And so the treatments of panchakarma, which are preceded by what's called purvakarma, or oil treatments, I used, and very effectively, and continue to use them periodically.
And there were diet considerations as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, at the time that I became ill, actually, I was a vegetarian, and I didn't eat refined sugar and all those things. And this was, well, in the early 1980s, before it was quite fashionable. And but I still had to make a few shifts. You know, I had too much light, dry, and airy food in my diet, and not enough lubrication, not enough oil in the diet. And so there were those kinds of adjustments that I needed to make.
Great, thank you very much.
Sure. Yes, thanks for listening.